What's up, gals? Thank you so much for being here with us again. Today we have an incredible speaker. His name's Roger Allen. He's a family life and parenting expert, business consultant, and a psychologist. He's helped organizations with their relationships and helped empower their employees for most of his career before turning over to being a parenting expert. Is that right, Roger?
Yes, that's correct. I spent the first 10 years of my career practicing psychology and then transitioned into full-time business consulting. And really, relationships are relationships. Some of the core values that I was teaching and skill sets that I was teaching with organizations are very similar to what we do within families. And so when I retired officially from my consulting, I did kind of come full circle back to the personal development, human development, parenting kind of material that has intrigued me and which I have loved for years.
Well, we're glad you did, because I have a feeling this is some advice that most of us parents are going to need at the end of this. We're going to be talking about parenting from faith, not fear, communicating in ways that connect and empower. So let's start off with, how do you react out of faith instead of fear in parenting? That can be a hard thing to do.
It can, and I think it's so critical. One of my beliefs is that good parenting is not about changing our children as much as changing ourselves. And if we get our focus too much on our children, then it's easy for us to not be coming from a good place ourselves as moms or as parents, and slip into fearful kinds of reactions instead of interacting with our children in strengthening ways. It becomes easy to interact with them in ways that are fearful and harmful in the long run. And so I have a little model that I use, and I call it the key moment model. And the key moment is a situation or event that is stressful, that causes us as parents to get upset, that hooks us in some way. And it could be anything from, a child not wanting to go to school, or a child feeling really anxious and concerned about COVID, being afraid to go out. It could be a child who brings home a bad report card, kids that are bickering, a brother who's a bully and picking on his brothers and sisters. So that's a key moment. And I think how we handle our key moments as parents makes a big difference to our success. And notice, following a key moment, there are thoughts and feelings that go on inside of me. And those thoughts and feelings can either be faith-based or they can be fear-based. And usually we're unconscious of what we're thinking and feeling. But from those thoughts and feelings, I make a choice. And the choice can be to act from faith or to react from fear. And typically when we react from fear, we have a tendency to do one of two things. Number one is we start over-managing, over-controlling our children. We go into automatically what has been so easy for me to do through the years as a parent is to want to lecture, to stand up on my soapbox and lecture my kids, or to nag them or threaten them or prod them or push them. I'm imposing control from without because I'm lacking the faith or lacking the trust that they can take responsibility for themselves and make good decisions, make good choices. Or I have a tendency to overindulge. And overindulge means that I accommodate. I see them as somewhat fragile and incapable, and I accommodate. I try to make life easy for them. I rescue, I fix things, I protect. And in either case, whether I'm over-controlling or overindulging, it leads to, and sorry, my slide's a little messed up here, but it leads to mistrust, low self-worth, lack of maturation on the part of our children, and a lack of problem solving. All of that comes from our fear response. On the other hand, if I can act as a parent from faith, if I can put myself in a good place to act from faith, then I'm able to show empathy. I'm able to instill responsibility in my kids. I'm able to speak to them honestly in an empowering way, sometimes in a way in which I'm setting limits. I mean, there are a whole lot of skills that we use, but my come from is very different. I'm a more empowered parent, and I'm able to build high trust, establish high worth, maturation. We're able to solve problems and so on.
Do you believe one of the keys to that is communication, acting in faith instead of fear is communication?
Yes. Let me tell you a story, if I could, that expands on this model that I'm talking about. This was a personal experience that shows how perfectly imperfect I am as a parent. I mean, in fact, that's probably part of why I became interested in thinking about lecturing on, writing about parenting, because I recognized that I was not perfect and I wanted to learn and to grow and to improve. So here's an experience that we had in our family when when my kids were 12. I had a daughter that was 12, a son 10, and a daughter 8. And it was about May, end of the school year, beginning of summer. And I wanted to make sure that my kids had a good summer. I wanted them to have fun, but I also wanted them to be productive. So we had a little family council sitting around our kitchen table. And I said, okay, guys, here is what I expect during the summer. I want you to be out of bed. Breakfast is at 8. You have your chores done by the time you come to breakfast. And then you'll be served breakfast, but you need to do your chores before breakfast and before you can play for the day. Well, my 12-year-old just really reacted. Dad, that's not fair. We've been going to school, we've been sleeping late, or getting up so early and doing homework, and on and on and on and on she went about all of the reasons that you're being so unreasonable and you're being unfair. And at first I argued with her, Melinda, I'm not asking that much. Your chores aren't all that difficult and you can sleep in on weekends, and on and on and on. And the two of us got into this little tiff, a little bit of an argument. And finally, I really brought my fist down on the table and I said, okay, guys, that is it. End of this meeting. And it startled my kids and it even alarmed my kids. And I said, you're all excused. And I got up and I walked into my bedroom. And when I walked into my bedroom, I felt awful. I felt really bad. I was feeling guilty. I was feeling, oh man, I've blown it. I lost my cool. But I was also feeling irritated with my daughter. I mean, who is she? 12 years old. And here she is pushing back on me. She's not even a teenager. And she's pushing back on me and arguing with me and not accepting my authority. And initially, I really built my case, how I was right and she was wrong, and how I'm the parent and she's the child, and how my expectations were reasonable and only for her own good, and so on. But then I started to think a little bit more deeply about what was happening. And I got in touch with my deeper feelings. And they were feelings of some fear and insecurity. About my daughter and the choices that she's making, and fear about not being in control of what's happening in the family, and fear of my daughter Melinda growing up and making her own decisions, and some embarrassment. I felt some embarrassment about how I had handled things, and some sense of inadequacy for losing my cool. And I had to spend some time just allowing myself to process my feelings. And allow those feelings, the resentment that I was feeling, the fear that I was feeling, the embarrassment that I was feeling, allow those to come up. And then I started looking at my thoughts. What's the thinking that's behind this? And my initial thinking, of course, was fear-based thinking. This was a disaster, and Melinda's being defiant, and I'm not able to influence my kids. And if my daughter's this way at 12, what is she going to be like at 16? And all of this fear-based thinking, until again, I started to challenge my thinking, and I changed my thoughts from, wow, this was really a disaster, to, well, I didn't handle that real well. Melinda's being defiant, to, she's growing older. She wants more control. She wants, more autonomy in her own life. I'm not able to influence my kids, became, oh, my kids and I really have a good relationship. They want to learn from me. And Melinda is so defiant at 12. How's she going to be at 16? Became, it's good and right for my kids to think for themselves. I want to stay close to them and help them explore what they believe and what's important to them. And I realized through that I needed to deal with myself. This wasn't about the kids. This was about me as a father. And I needed to process my feelings. I needed to process my thoughts. And when I did that, I was able to change my assumptions to more positive assumptions. And so we came back a few days later and I said, guys, I didn't handle this real well. Let's talk about our summer schedule. But I was a lot more open to their input. And I said, what would work for you? And what do you think? And so we explored it together and we all shared our ideas and then said, okay, let's come up with an agreement that we can all work on, which we did. And we had a perfectly good summer. And that daughter and I have a perfectly good relationship. But I was thinking, I was coming from fear, right? Instead of from trust, instead of from faith. I needed to work on me first, and then I could be a better parent with the kids.
And what were your kids' reactions when you came back to them and said, I'm sorry, I made a mistake?
It was good.
Let's talk about this together.
The reactions were good. The reactions were, okay, Dad, we knew you were imperfect anyway. But when I bring up with my kids and I ask them when I learned that I would be doing this, I said, okay, tell me about my bad parenting. What were my imperfections as a parent? And you know what? This is the incident that they brought up, pounding my fist on the table, and it was scary and it was frightening, and but they handled it well. And I needed to grow. I needed to realize, wait, these aren't little kids anymore. I need to be willing to trust them and to give them more autonomy, more authority, more say in what happens within our family. And so I began to do that, and they liked it. And it was a good summer, but they appreciated me coming back. Yes. And letting them know that I blew it. I didn't handle it well. I'm sorry, guys. I'm an imperfect dad.
And hey, we're all imperfect. And especially as parents, we're all just kind of doing the best we can as we go along. So Roger, what advice would you have for a parent who maybe is trying to parent out of faith, but they have a child who keeps lying? He doesn't want to be around the family. He'd prefer to be alone. How do you handle a rebellious kid like that?
And it really does make a difference whether the child is rebellious and fighting back or whether the child is retreating and fearful and anxious, how we handle them. But it does come back to our basic assumptions. So if I had a parent approach me like that, I would begin by obviously doing some good listening. I think that's the most important skill we can use, and learn as much as possible from that mother or that father, that parent, about that child. But then I would ask them to do a fear thought dump. And when I say a fear, tell me all of your fearful thoughts about how this child is going to grow up. And a parent might say something like, oh man, this kid is selfish. He doesn't care about anybody but himself. He's lazy. He is just so hard to get along with. His life is going to be a disaster. I would have them talk to me, tell me about those fears, those concerns, even what is the worst case scenario that could happen with this son. And I would encourage them to even be in touch with their feelings. What are the feelings that you have about? And let them begin to become more conscious of their feelings, the fear, the inadequacy they feel, the helplessness or powerlessness that they feel. Those parents may need to express some of that before they're able to learn and move on to a better way of parenting. But then I would say, okay, can we shift those thoughts from fear-based to faith-based? What might faith-based or trust-based thoughts sound like? And faith-based thoughts would sound like, this is really a good kid and he's going through a hard time, but he's going to grow up and he's going to make some mistakes, but he's going to make some decisions and learn to make better decisions and get things right. And he's capable, he's smart. In fact, he's got a great sense of humor. And his pushback is because he's really struggling with something right now. And I'm not even sure I know what that is. but he's in pain. Kids don't act out simply because they're bad. Kids act out because they're hurting inside.
Right.
And he's hurting. And I need to be a safe place for him and listen to him and let him talk to me. But he's really a capable person, and I think that he's going to work through whatever issues he has, and he's going to come out okay on the other side, and he's going to be a great, wonderful adult. So those are faith-based, trust-based kinds of thoughts.